Seriously, KZ? Alright, I didn't plan to do 2 videos in a row about KZ or their IEMs. But with all the controversy going around, I mean, the stuff that I got on the queue, like those 2 hanging back there, yeah, all that's gonna have to wait a bit. Because, for my luck, as usual, my last review, my last video was a review on this. This is the KZ ZEX Pro, which is an IM result of a collaboration between KZ and Critical. KZ built the thing, and Critical was responsible for directing the tuning of the IM, and I love it. Absolutely love it. At the same time, I have been openly critical about KZ in the past, and you guys can see in my comments and my responses to comments in a bunch of different videos that I have never been shy about that, and I have basically stated overall that I don't really like KZ IMs, or at least haven't in the past. So it really sucks to be me in a situation where something like this happens and makes both KZ and everybody who has had anything good about them or their IMs look like complete fools. Anyway, for a bit of context, a dude named Jeff Fries, decided that he wanted to open up a couple of KZ IMs and tinker with them. And he decided that after opening them up, he would start disconnecting some or several of the drivers inside of those IMs to just see what would happen. And to his surprise, or maybe not to... Anyway, he observed that both the ZEX Pro and the DQ6 were basically unaffected by disconnecting all other drivers, leaving only the basic dynamics playing. Meaning that, in a nutshell, all that we have been listening to were the dynamic drivers in those IMs in the first place. And as you guys are very much aware, the internet doesn't forgive and the internet doesn't forget. So, of course, obviously, this whole situation blew out of proportion and became a huge deal, with several discussions going on since then, including bunches of attacks to both KZ and the reviewers who worked with them on those collaborations, i.e. both Critical and Bad Guy Good Audio Reviews. Okay, so with that context, what does it all mean? Well, first, how does it and should it even affect the brands? Well, in my opinion, it does. And yes, it absolutely should. Honestly, this behavior is super sketchy. And yeah, I absolutely think that KZ should pay for it. At least in terms of, well, nobody paying for their IMs anymore. Now, don't get me wrong. Whatever KZ has done in the past, both with merits that they have deserved and with all the criticism that they have gathered over the years from the good and the bad stuff that they have put out, none of that really changes. I was really harsh on my review of the ASX because, well, it's an atrocity of an IM. It doesn't really matter if some of the drivers weren't being used, were just there for show, or if they didn't know what to do with the drivers and left them in there anyways, or if absolutely every single driver in that IM was working as intended. It was still and is still a terrible IM at any price range, let alone at $100. Same thing goes for the CR, CCA, and RA. Same thing goes for the CCA CA10. Same thing goes for the KZ ZES. All of them terrible. Now, on the other side of that coin, the ZEX Pro has been praised for being absolutely excellent, for delivering excellent sound for the money. And I have personally said in my review that if it cost $50 or $60, which is quite a bit more than the 37 MSRP, I would still probably recommend it. Now, the fact that it has unused drivers in it doesn't really change that. Yes, it could have been a cheaper IEM because it would, the overall cost would be less. So KZ could have made it cheaper, but even if they did launch it with none of the unused drivers at the same price or at $50 or $60, it would probably still be recommended by every single one of the same reviewers who has listened to it and that liked and enjoyed it, because the end result is good. The tuning made it good. It doesn't matter how they got there. It doesn't matter if they had 1, 2, or 15 drivers in there. And the same thing applies to the CRA, which is potentially even more impressive than the ZEX Pro because it does an arguably better job at both the low end and the high end, proportionally speaking, while being less than half the cost at about $14. And I get that the CRA is probably not the best example for this situation because it does use only one diaphragm driver inside, but the point still stands. So technically speaking, KZ is the one that's actually, just wasting profit by raising their own, production costs for no reason. Now, granted, this is just the first part of the story because we do need to take into consideration if this whole thing happened either by pure, due to incompetence, or if it was a strategy. If it's the first one, then yeah, totally. KZ's the one just throwing money away, throwing profits away, because they basically blew up their production costs without even knowing what to do with the damn drivers they wanted to put in the IMs in the first place, which is frankly ridiculous. And this is a multi-level, company-wide incompetence display right here. Because at one level, you have the engineers who, that's their job, and they didn't know what to do with the damn drivers. So, incompetence right there. Then there's the management who apparently didn't do anything to check what the hell was being done by everybody else while this thing was being put together. And they just left the building and let the incompetent engineers run this colossal hack job of a shop. And if an engineering team asks for the budget and the resources to put 3 different drivers in an IEM, I may be wrong, but shouldn't there be someone at some part during the process, checking to see if each component was working properly before putting everything together? Because I really doubt that they just put all the components inside of the IEM, soldered everything together, and only then turned it on to see if the thing would melt. It's again, incompetence. And worse still, if this has been the same team working and building and tuning all the other IMs KZ has put out over the years, well, it kind of explains the multiple train wrecks, but at the same time, it also means that all the good ones were basically pure luck. But if it wasn't incompetence, if it was a strategy, if they actually did this on purpose just to have more arguments, just to have more bullet points to put in marketing materials, because let's face it, the general public is probably going to look at an IM with 3 different drivers as being something that's more complex, so potentially better than something with only 1 driver, and that should rack up sales, right? That is actually much worse because every company exists to make money, right? Absolutely no one has a problem with that. No one has a problem with paying for a product that they need or they want, that is good, that they see value in, and that they see the price that's being asked as something that's, honest. No one has a problem with that. And I would bet there's probably no one out there that thinks KZ shouldn't do something, shouldn't create new things, shouldn't design things in different ways, shouldn't employ different marketing strategies to try and rock the boat and shake things up in a way to rack up sales, right? But as a customer, you guys and me and all of us, when we buy something, everything being said about that product better be real. And we have all been way too lenient. We are way too accustomed to seeing claims of battery life, of durability, of performance, that they are much closer to being a lie just because of the huge amount of asterisks that's right to the side of the information, because the specific situations that need to happen for those claims to be true are so mind-boggling that they're closer to being just a lie instead of real fact. But this situation, this is not that. This is a flat-out lie, KZ, and it's unacceptable. As for the reviewers, well, I honestly don't really imagine they had much access to the products they were collaborating on to begin with. Both Critical and Bad Guy probably just sent graphs and ideas and directions to KZ in terms of try to get the tuning in this way, try to make it, work like this waveform and this sound profile, and then KZ would go about their business and do the different, changes they needed to, that go through different iterations, and then get that, create prototypes, send over to the guys for them to test and to see if it was, getting to the ideal point. Back and forth a couple or probably a bunch of times until it all got to hit the target. And once it hit the target, well, that's done. So I don't at all think or feel that they should be held responsible for all this crap to the same standard or with KZ. They were the ones who decided to do all of this in this, shady way. But I would say that this whole situation needs to serve as an example and a reminder to both them and anyone else that if a brand contacts you and asks you to be a part of something like this, of a collaboration like this, or any other for that matter, you need to make yourself aware of everything about the product that you're going to be collaborating on. It doesn't matter if your influence in the process is restricted to just one part of it, or your job is to only look at the graphs and the way that something is going to be tuned in terms of an IEM. Because like it or not, Critical's brand is now linked to the ZEX Pro. If KZ had gone completely nuts and decided to sell this thing for $300, Critical would be hurt with them. If the materials used were of poor quality, if the cable was terrible, if the whole experience wasn't good or had any sort of trouble or inconsistency, to the general public, Critical is just as responsible for that, or has just as much importance in that scenario as KZ. Case in point, this video actually. So even if he had absolutely nothing to do with all of this, he should have still prodded and poked and asked around and checked and rechecked and questioned every single aspect of this product launch before ever agreeing to or letting anyone attach his brand to that product and push it out to market. As for KZ, man, this is actually kind of a bummer because honestly, I personally don't think I'm going to be reviewing any more IEMs from them, any more products from them, unless it's something that really, really grabs my attention, or it's an IEM with only one driver, because honestly, I do not have the skills to open up an IEM and tinker with the drivers like Mr. French Fries. If I open up an IEM and start disconnecting shit, that's not coming back to life. Anyways, I do hope that this whole situation isn't like an opening of the floodgates with a bunch of other companies getting caught in lies from here on in, as KZ has just been. But I do have to be honest and say that, yeah, from now on, at least for a while, I am going to act much more skeptically than before. Because who's to say, right? And yeah, the ZEX Pro is still a pretty fantastic, pretty great IEM, as is the CRA actually. And in their respective price brackets, I would recommend them in a heartbeat over most of everything else, if it wasn't for this whole situation. And maybe I am being a little bit too close-minded or too harsh with the whole thing, but neither of these products are an end-all be-all kind of thing. And honestly, I'd rather support a brand that doesn't behave like this. And yeah, I know that also hurts both Critical and Bad Guy audio reviews, but I'm sorry dudes, I just can't do it. And that's been it. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, thanks a lot for watching, and I'll catch you guys later.